I figured that by now everybody's getting tired of hearing about the conveniently timed suicide of Jeffrey Epstein. So today on Connecticut Yankee Sanity, I propose to talk about, you guessed it, Guatemala. Guatemala? But don't touch that mouse. Stick around a bit before clicking to another channel. The country has become more important to us than you may realize. It has always been a hellhole, a condition to which in the past our own government contributed, making life cushy for the United Fruit Company. Things are slightly better now than when I traveled there during their long and bloody civil war. The teenage brother of one of my business colleagues, whose family owned a hotel chain based in the capital, was ambushed by guerrillas while out on a high school date. They murdered him. Another colleague, a German national based in Panama, stopped traveling to the country, fearing he'd meet the same fate, and so on and so forth. To be honest, I wonder what the hell I was doing there myself. Well, so much for sentimental memories. Now, a few facts. Guatemala has a population of 17.5 million, almost the size of Florida's. One survey reported that 85% of their citizens say they'd like to live in the U.S. A million of them do, legally or otherwise. Remittances from Guatemalans living outside the country make up fully 12% of its 76 billion GDP, with 90% of those remittances, or 8.2 billion, coming from the US. Yes, dear viewers, that means that 8.2 billion of the dollars Guatemalans earn here aren't spent here, but are removed from our economy and put into circulation in theirs. Mr. Trump is the first US president to make a serious attempt to resolve the crisis at our southern border, and Guatemala is geographically and politically significant. His trademark carrot and stick approach has provoked the usual denunciations from the American left, as well as the usual attempts at obstruction. Our press, the Washington establishment, and the entire American left, it appears, are on the side of Guatemala, not ours. A saboteur in our State Department leaked the draft of the safe third country agreement we worked out with Jimmy Morales, the incumbent Guatemalan president, and the New Yorker magazine proudly published it as an act of patriotism. We have a similar agreement with Canada, by the way, but that one wasn't of interest to the New Yorker, or to anyone else for that matter. The deal with Guatemala went ahead anyway. Mr. Trump wants Hondurans, Salvadorans, and Guatemalans to file asylum claims in their home countries or in Guatemala itself. That has precedent in law. The so-called Dublin regulation in the EU specifies that the country that first receives an asylum claimant has the responsibility for processing him. In our case, that would mean not processing claims on our side of the border, where the claimant can hightail it to the nearest sanctuary city, never to be heard from again, unless he falls into the hands of the police. Processing these people outside the U.S. strikes the left as inhumane, an offense against all the left stands for, in particular open borders. That they consider Guatemala an unsuitable environment for asylum seekers and a country incapable of handling the volume of claims means ipso facto that we are responsible, morally and financially. But there's another aspect to this. The overwhelming majority of asylum seekers, which has become the accepted term, are not that at all, but economic migrants. They come here to earn money. Under Title 8 of the U.S. Code, there is a specific provision against frivolous asylum claims. That is, claims that have no basis in fact. I'd be glad to hear from anyone who can demonstrate to me that the tens of thousands of foreigners crossing our southern border each month are in any sense true asylum seekers. That includes Senator Cory Booker and the other U.S. lawmakers who slip into Mexico to coach them on how to make their claims once they're on our side of the border. As for true economic migrants, President Trump has agreed to a guest worker visa program for Guatemalans. Clearly, the whole safe third country and visa scheme is an outrage about which something must be done to save us, yet again, from the Trumpsters' bugling. As soon as it became clear that the New Yorker caper wouldn't queer the deal, Nancy Pelosi swung into action. She assembled a delegation, which included her newfound friends Ilhan Omar and Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez, for a junket to Guatemala. along with the usual staff and security personnel complements of the U.S. taxpayer. She planned a state visit to President Morales, right? Not on your life. Literally on the eve of Guatemala's second round presidential elections, Mrs. Pelosi went there to make nice with supporters of the socialist candidate, Sandra Torres, and various prominent Guatemalans with ties to the Soros Foundation. Speaking publicly, she denounced the shameful treatment that migrants receive at the hands of our border agents. She further cited the agreement signed between our two countries as likely to be detrimental to Guatemala. Thus spoke the Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives in the Guatemalan capital. If it weren't so disgraceful, we'd be laughing our heads off. The irony of her visit is painfully obvious. For the past 2 years, the gutter media have been haranguing us about Russian interference in our elections. They wanted us to believe that Vladimir Putin, his knees knocking together at the prospect of what Hillary Clinton would do to him if she were elected president, contrived to put his agent, Donald J. Trump, into the White House. But no sooner does the Mueller report crash and burn, and Mueller along with it, than Mrs. Pelosi jets to Guatemala with the intention of influencing their presidential election. The old girl, soft in the head as she apparently is, was worried about something. But what? Suddenly it dawned on me what it was. Kevin McAleenan, the acting Home Security Secretary, had reported that the number of Guatemalan illegals crossing the U.S. border was down 41%. The number from El Salvador down 21%, and from Honduras 16%. There's the problem in a nutshell. Now the Trumpster comes up with this cockamamie agreement with Guatemala to prevent even more future Democratic voters, desperate migrants seeking a better life, from entering the U.S. No wonder Mrs. Pelosi was in a panic to throw her toothbrush and makeup kit into a carry-on bag and vamoose for Guatemala. I suppose we can expect the usual legal challenges to the president's fulfilling his duty against the left's wishes to defend the country's borders. What the effect of that will be, we'll have to see. Meanwhile, yesterday, the conservative Guatemalan candidate, Dr. Alejandro Giammattei, won the election with a decisive 58.5% of the vote. Guatemalans are sick of corruption. Sandra Torres was tainted by it, so they decided they could do without her. As for Mrs. Pelosi, even before becoming Speaker, she, in her own sweet way, has been doing her best to obstruct and, if possible, get rid of our own elected president. Dr. Giammattei's victory makes her a two-time loser at the game of king-making or on-making. Perhaps she should leave international diplomacy to the president and concentrate on reining in the far left of her own party. At least then, she'd be doing her constituents and her country a service. Thanks for watching. Please click like and subscribe, and pass the link along to support the channel. We'll see you back here next time.